Welcome back, AP. Welcome back to it. Welcome back to your flipped classroom and our discussion of the unification of Germany. That's right, we're talking about the unification journey under Bismarck and Wilhelm I, which literally, really quick little factual error. It's not the son of Frederick Wilhelm, it's actually his brother, but that's neither here nor there. The big thing about it, though, that we left off talking about is we started talking about Otto von Bismarck, his aggression, his intensity, and his desire to create a unified German state, right? And so the biggest thing we got into is we started talking about his personality. We started talking about how he was going to have some issues with the middle-class liberals and stuff like that. Now, they didn't really support militarism or using tax funds to build up the military. Now, Bismarck's just going to be like, well, I'm just going to do it anyway. So the thing about it, though, also is we also communicated about the Zollverein, right? We started talking about the Zollverein, this German trade customs union that was actually united together by the Prussians to try and make it so they could freely have growing economics within Prussia. Something that you need to understand about Prussia as well by this point is that they were very industrious. They also had a massive boom during the Second Industrial Revolution and were producing almost as much steel as Britain was by this time and was actually really beginning to sneak up on them in the terms of the growth of factories and the growth of mechanization. Now, looking at this entire thing, though, you can't really keep building up factories and keep growing in your land, though, until you have this unified country of which Bismarck desires, right? So the big thing we talked about, though, today in class as well is we started talking about the blood and iron speech, right? We talked about how Bismarck stood there and was like, the great questions of the day will not be answered by pen and paper, but by blood and iron, right? So, like, in talking about how literally he believed that the military and the military state was going to be the way to go. So the very first of 3 wars that Bismarck fights against a couple of different foes and a couple of different people to try and begin to unite the German states together and also begin to gobble up more territory. The very first one is called the Second Schleswig War, right? The Second Schleswig War, not the first one, but the second one. And it's going to be over these 2 provinces, right? Schleswig and Holstein, right? Schleswig, Holstein. And the idea was going to be, look, the Danes are trying to gobble up our territory. So where this all came from is because the Danes, under their new king and under the king of Denmark, tried to bring Schleswig and Holstein into their country using a new document and a new constitution, where they would actually claim Schleswig and Holstein to be Danish provinces and states, not areas they controlled, but places inside of their territorial country. Well, the thing about it is Bismarck takes offense to this because he's like, those people don't speak Danish, they speak German, and they actually are German people by culture. So as a nationalistic urge and as the genius of German people, they should be with other Germans, right? So the war breaks out, and he actually convinced Austria to fight alongside of them, right? He's like, look, I'll tell you what, Austria. He tells Austria, look, we'll give you Schleswig if you fight with us, and we'll take Holstein, right? We'll give you Schleswig, we'll take Holstein. You'll get the northern one. It's got some ports and stuff like that. You'll be able to use it and also support the growth of the German people and things like that, right? Well, Austria does come in and actually allies with them, and this war only lasts about 9 months. Their Danes get overwhelmed by the Austrians and the Germans, and the big thing about it, though, is now they've only got one issue. When they actually go into this, Schleswig is going to be controlled by the Austrians, and the Austrians aren't in the Zollverein, so what are they going to do? They're going to have to cross all this German territory, pay buttloads of taxes, or even be unable to move certain products. So now Bismarck just wants to get rid of Austrian influence, right? Because you got to understand something really important. There was this massive debate, a huge debate that was actually going on during this time period, not really even amongst Germans, but actually much more amongst the other powers of Europe, right? There were these 2 products or principles. One was called Greater Germany, the other one was called Little Germany, or Big Germany and Little Germany, right? Big Germany would have been the idea of including Austria in this unification plan, all the German-speaking territories of Austria, right? And so it would have been a massive area in the middle of Europe that would have threatened the balance of power and also kind of made couple of countries a little bit nervous, those including France and Russia, right? Now then the other one, by the way, Greater Germany was also referred to as Großdeutschland, because gross in German literally means bigger. And then Little Germany was the idea of Prussia being in charge of this unification movement and leaving Austria out of it. Hence, Kleindeutschland. Klein literally means small Germany, right? So Großdeutschland, Kleindeutschland. So the idea, though, was the Prussian sided with the idea of Kleindeutschland, right? Little Germany. They wanted to be in charge of directing how this entire thing would go and directing, in a sense, the economics, the industrialism, the government, and the growth of this idea of a unified German state, right? Well, the thing about it is after they win the Second Schleswig War, Prussia claims even more territory. Particularly, they have more territory over towards the one area they already owned called the Rhineland. And the other thing about it is Austria is going to get this northern province and some little like bits and pieces in the middle. Well, the thing about it that now what we got to figure out is, Otto von Bismarck's got to get rid of the Austrians, right? How do we get rid of the Austrians? We figure out a way to go to war with them, right? So they actually start another war that happens about a year later. It's known as the Austro-Prussian War, right? Why would you do this, Bismarck? Because they don't want Austria involved. They don't want Großdeutschland. They want Kleindeutschland, right? They want the smaller version of Germany with Prussia at the lead, the economics and the modes, right? And also, not even to mention the fact as well, they don't want Austria involved because Austria owns this massive monarchy that actually doesn't only just control necessarily, German speakers. It also controls Hungarians and Croatians and like Serbians and all these other people over towards the east and the Balkans, right? And that is not a part of Bismarck's plan. He's like, we are creating Germany. We're not creating Germany and then some, right? So the thing about it also is religion, they're super Catholic and stuff like that, whereas most North Germans were actually much more Protestant. And the other big thing that you need to understand as well is the Austro-Prussian War is only going to last about 7 weeks, right? Why was it so short? And how was it kept so localized, okay? And it all happened in the year of 1869, just to give you a heads up, right? So Italy has already become a country by this point, and the Crimean War is over, right? So the thing about it is, though, is how was Bismarck able to fight Austria without Russia getting involved, right? Without other people coming down on the side of Austria, allying with them, and fighting the Germans back? Well, a lot of it does have to do with the Crimean War, right? Because actually Austria didn't help Russia during that war, so Russia was a little peeved at him. So they left him alone, right? France did not actually enter into on the side of Austria because France had just got done fighting a war against Austria to try and liberate those northern Italian states. So the thing about it was Austria was in this by themselves, right? And it lasted only 7 weeks. And a lot of it has to do with that idea of Prussian militarism and Prussian industrialism, right? You got to understand something very important. We talked about this a little bit. We talked about the Second Industrial Revolution. We briefly went over a family that actually came from Germany that we talked about in like 2 seconds when I showed you that like actual factory, the Ford factory from Manchester. But also there was this other family that was Prussian when they actually began their entire movement during the Second Industrial Revolution. They were called the Krupp family, and the Krupp family was very well known for making weapons, right? The Krupp family, along with the Prussian military as well, is going to invent a brand new gun, right? A brand new gun that, like I've said before, I love talking about weaponry. I don't know why I find it so interesting. And apparently Rowan already knows how this thing is loaded because she's actually probably communicated about this thing, I think also like before, she likes history and stuff like that. So might actually understand how this is. The big difference is that during the Austro-Prussian War, Prussia absolutely overran the Austrian Empire, pushed them all the way back out to the North German Confederation and forced them to accept an armistice because Austria was overwhelmed. The Italians fought against them. This right here actually in this war is going to be how the Italians finally get Venice back, right? Austria gives it up and stuff like that, so they actually give it over. Ironically enough, the Austrians gave it to France first, and then France was like, here you go, Italy, and just handed it over because 19th century war, it's pretty confusing. Now, the thing about it, though, when you're looking at it as well, this gun, though, perfectly represents Prussian militarism and Prussian industrialism. This gun was invented during this era, and it has a very, very important name. It's called the Dreise needle gun, right? Dreise needle gun, or you can just call it the needle gun. The thing about it is it's very much different from the guns the Austrians were using, right? This gun is an Austrian gun. It's a musket. You've seen these before. They can only fire one shot. They can only hold one shot. Then also the best people in the world and the best Austrian shooters in the world, a trained Austrian soldier can fire maybe 2, maybe 3 shots in a minute if he's just like an expert at it, right? Whereas the Dreise needle gun, someone can fire 7 shots a minute, receiving barely any training. And a lot of it has to do with the loading mechanism, right? You see this little thing right here? It's a breech loading rifle. So literally what you do is you actually take the bolt right there, turn it up, pull it back, and it exposes the back end of the barrel, right? You then take a little bullet pack that's already packed up and ready to go, slipped it inside, reloaded the breech, and inside of the gun itself was a little needle, and it would hit a firing, or it's actually known as a firing pin now. It would hit a blasting cap in the back end of that little bullet pack and just send this acorn-shaped bullet right out to the actual muzzle. And when I'm ready to reload, it's just clack, clack, pull it out, take that out, put it in another one, clack, clack, boom, and just let off another one, right? 7 shots a minute versus 3 shots a minute, right? This is a very, very big deal, and this new weapon is going to push the Austrians down, and bang, this war is over in 7 weeks, right? The armistice also, though, too, was very generous because Bismarck realized, okay, we got to actually go in the right direction, and if I make an enemy for the rest of my existence right here, then how am I ever actually going to fight wars against other people, right? So the thing about it is they were very generous to Austria, and they were like, look, biggest thing is you don't have to pay us any war reparations, right? You don't have to worry about paying us back for anything. It's not a big deal. Also, the thing about it is Austria did not lose any territory. The only place they lost was Schleswig, and that's it. Like that northern province, that's the only thing they had to give up. And also, Venice was given to Italy because they supported the Prussians as well, right? Austria also, though, big thing, they had to mind their own business, right? They had to withdraw from German affairs and agree to not come into any future conflicts that may involve the unification of Germany. Now Bismarck has to do something very important because he's now gobbled up a huge amount of territory, right? We got maps on deck, and we got to make sure that we understand this. So now, after the actual Austro-Prussian War, you can make the argument that Bismarck's goal was achieved because he created a brand new country that was unified together, and it was called the North German Confederation. A constitution is written, and a lot of new things are going to be decided. Now, the thing about it is, looking at it, the North German Confederation was very, very large, and Germany in the modern era takes up about, this little area right here, okay? All this stuff over here that's former Prussia is now actually a part of Poland, just to give you a heads up. The thing about it is, though, is you could argue that Bismarck has accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. Look at this giant unified German state up here in the north. The thing about it is, though, is down here, they're also German. But we'll get to them here in a second, okay? Now, the meeting in the middle of Bismarck, though, is absolutely genius because as the country grows, he has to try and figure out ways to keep the middle class happy, keep the workers happy, and keep these new German citizens happy as well. Even though it's still not called Germany yet, it's called the North German Confederation. Now, the ideas that he comes up with is he decides to kind of be smart like Napoleon III and be a little bit more on the moderate side, right? He consolidates the principalities into states, and each of them is allowed to keep their local government. Now, a big thing about it, though, is that he actually looked at these former German principalities and all these areas that used to be a part of the Schmalkaldic League way back in the day, in the 1500s during the Reformation. He consolidated them all together, though, and he said, you will be different states, keep your local government. Whatever governments or small parliaments or little princes and nobles that you had, you're allowed to keep them. They just must swear allegiance to the North German Confederation and to the new Kaiser, right? Also, universal suffrage is going to be given to men over the age of 25, right? So now this is a really big deal, right? All German men over the age of 25 are going to be allowed to vote, right? But it's about what they're allowed to vote on, right? So now this is really, really key. Something that we actually saw, kind of some France have some problems with this and stuff like that, is universal suffrage for them was really, really difficult due to the fact that they were voting for everybody, right? They were voting for a president, they were voting for Chamber of Deputy members and stuff like that. Whereas in Prussia and / the North German Confederation at this point, no one's voting for the Kaiser. He's born into this position and stuff like that. They're actually trying to adopt more of a British-style government. Now, speaking of, what are they voting for if they're allowed to vote at the age of 25? Well, they established their new legislative body, the German parliament. And the parliament is called the Reichstag, right? And the Reichstag is this massive, gorgeous, beautiful building in Berlin to this day, Reichstag. The Reichstag building is very, very large and very, very gorgeous, and the Reichstag building actually is going to play a major important role as we get really, really close to whatchamacallit. See, completed in 1894, actually constructed right after the formation of the North German Confederation, and also finished construction after the unification of Germany. But this beautiful building right here, the Reichstag in Germany, their parliament, actually is going to be really, really important too later on, because actually a part of it catches fire. The dome up here catches fire at one point, and Hitler blames it on some people, and it's how he actually ends up coming to power. So the Reichstag is very important. Keep it in the back of your mind. But that is the idea of the German parliament that's being created. Also, another big thing about it is he was like, look, if I'm going to let all y'all vote, if I'm going to give you all these things, the chancellor is not responsible to the Reichstag whatsoever. He's responsible to the Kaiser, and that is it, right? That is who I answer to. So Kaiser and chancellor, okay, are going to end up also controlling the army, okay, as a form of their executive branch. Now, the genius here is that just like Napoleon III, Bismarck had secretly, behind the scenes, set up a system where he could go over the head of the liberal middle class and straight to the people using the military if he so chose, right? All the real power in Prussia at this point, or in the North German Confederation, laid with the Kaiser and its military. And Bismarck is right there, pulling the strings from behind, right? Now, somebody else is going to get really mad at him for pulling these strings later on, and that's going to be the Kaiser's son, Wilhelm II, but he's a big turd, and he has a dead arm, and we'll talk about him a little bit later on. Now, the thing about it, though, is when we're looking at this map, we have one, Bismarck just can't let it go. He's got one huge issue. All this stuff down here in orange, he doesn't own, right? Not he himself, but, it's not a part of the North German Confederation. They're an area that you've probably heard of before. They're a region known as Bavaria, right? AKA Bayern. Now, every one of you has seen a product that comes out of Bavaria before, their very largest city in Bavaria being that of Munich, right? The product you've seen come out of Bayern before, or Bavaria, is BMW motor cars, right? Because literally that B in the Bayern, or the B in BMW stands for Bayern, or Bavarian motor cars, right? So the thing about it is, though, it's got a problem. They are not a part of this new North German Confederation. Some of you are like, what's this little red thing? That's actually a little region called Hohenzollern. It's where the Hohenzollern family originally is from. So the thing about it, though, is how do we convince this Catholic area down here, like how do we convince this Catholic area of Bavaria, how do we convince these people to join up with this North German Confederation idea that we have? The problem is that they're very, very Catholic. They like these areas don't really want to go in North Germany at this point. So Bismarck has to figure out a way to make it look like Germany is the right way to go and how to placate and play off their nationalism. How do I make them feel more German and less Bavarian, right? Well, the answer is get into a war with France, right? Remember, there has been a German, French military rivalry ever since Napoleon, right? Ever since Napoleon the First, ever since the first Napoleon. They have really, really hated each other's guts ever since Napoleon occupied the entire Holy Roman Empire, destroyed it, and turned it into the German Confederation. The thing about it, though, or excuse me, he turned it into the Confederation of the Rhine. But the thing about it, though, is the war with France is the answer. However, Bismarck's going to play this just delicately. He can't just go off and fight Germany or France and stuff like that, because if he does, you're going to have a huge problem and you're going to look like the aggressor. So actually, Bismarck taunts France into starting the war on their own, right? Reason why is because he springs on a certain opportunity, right? What ends up going down is actually the King of Spain dies, and a man that is actually ascending to the throne is a man by the name of Leopold Hohenzollern. He is the nephew and relative of Kaiser Wilhelm, right? Of Bismarck's king. Literally his relative nephew. France is freaking out about this because I don't want a Hohenzollern on one side and on the other one. We're starting to have 30 years war flashbacks to like Cardinal Richelieu trying to fight off the Habsburgs and stuff like that. But he doesn't want that. So he actually sends a text message, well, not a text message, a telegram, to Wilhelm telling him, big fella, tell your nephew not to take the throne in Spain. It's not good diplomacy. It doesn't make any sense. They should pick someone else, right? And what ends up happening is like Kaiser Wilhelm, sends a telegram back to like Napoleon III, and he actually is sending it to him from a place called Bad Ems, right? Bad Ems is a city in North Germany that is very famous for its spas, okay? So Wilhelm was on a vacation. He sends the telegram back kind of being like, we will discuss this, we will take it under consideration, blah, 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 blah. Bismarck takes the telegram, and he's like, let's play a game, right? He changes the wording of the telegram to make it look like Kaiser Wilhelm is brushing off the French and telling them to shut up. He changes it a little bit, and he publishes it in newspapers. Then, who's going to get all salty about this? Napoleon III. He's going to feel offended, so war commences, and it's known as the Franco-Prussian War, right? The Franco-Prussian War broke out, and the South German states, the super Bavarian areas, actually supported the Prussians because they thought they were being attacked by the French. They were like, look, we are more German right now than Bavarian. We will come to your aid, right? And the German forces at this war are going to overwhelm the French. Napoleon III bit off a little bit more than he could chew in this because remember, the Prussians are very militaristic and they have industrialized very heavily, right? They've got better railways and an equal-sized army to the French do as well. And so what happens is actually the Prussians even captured Napoleon at this very famous battle called the Battle of the Sedan. At the Battle of the Sedan, which is actually right on the western borders of Germany, or excuse me, at the time, it was the Rhineland. Right over in the west, actually Napoleon III's army loses, and he ends up getting captured by Otto von Bismarck. This is the two of them actually sitting on a bench talking to each other. Now, how do French people react when they lose battles and stuff? Oh, they just declare themselves the Third French Republic right now. They're like, we're no longer the Second French Empire. He's not our king anymore. And they actually try to go full-on legislative body, republic again, and they have yet another small revolution. It's actually called the Paris Commune, right? And this is literally the thing that's called the Paris Commune because the Prussian forces were marching into France, and they actually got all the way to Paris, right? Now, the problem is, though, is Bismarck doesn't want to go into Paris and start shooting women and children and stuff like that. He's got to figure out a way to get Paris to surrender while they're having another revolution. Fun fact, though, the Paris Commune was a communist revolution. We'll talk about it a little bit later on. Just kind of highlight the word Paris Commune. Keep it in the back of your mind. Now, the thing about it, though, going into it, France has now declared itself a republic. They're now this Paris Commune. Bismarck can't shoot women and children, to recap. And then what he decides to end up doing? He's like, all right, let's starve them out. All right, so like what he does is he creates a huge blockade of military members around the outside of Paris, and he bombards the city, right? Like he bombards the city with these newfangled things that the Krupp family has created called artillery shells, right? And he begins to actually shoot at the city and begins to kind of like tear it apart bit by bit and uses cannons to actually kind of like weaken the infrastructure of Paris. And they don't allow food in or out of the city, and so literally the Parisians turn to eating cats, dogs, and even zoo animals as a form of sustenance while their city is being bombarded by the Germans instead of being directly invaded. Come on, man. Like, let me go look at the thing. Like, so, come on. Why are you being like this? Nope. There it is. That is right there, the state of Paris after the German bombardment. That is the butcher shop for dogs and cats. And then right here, you can see a menu that was actually released at a Paris restaurant during this entire thing. And it says, oh, our hors d'oeuvre, we have sardines to start. And then we, also, by the way, we have some consommé d'éléphant. They literally went to the zoo and ate all the zoo animals. They have kangaroo right here. They have some rats on the menu and stuff like that. Because look, the French will eat zoo animals before surrendering to the Germans. But eventually, they do surrender to the Germans because you can't just eat zoo animals for the rest of your existence. And Kaiser Wilhelm will be proclaimed the emperor of the new German Empire after the Bavarian states join up with the Germans, right? And out of the biggest insult on the planet, Kaiser Wilhelm decides to declare this new thing, the German Empire, and that he will be proclaimed the new emperor of Germany. But guess what room they do it in? They do it in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, right in France's face. Like, man, what an insult. That is ridiculous. And there is Bismarck right there, pledging allegiance to the new Kaiser of the German Empire, right? The thing about it, though, is this is extremely embarrassing for France. It's going to make everything even worse. And then they're also going to force France to pay $5 billion in reparations. And the French and the Germans hate each other even more. Now, the other thing about it, too, is that France is going to be forced to give something up. They're forced to give up a territory known as Alsace-Lorraine. And remember, the big thing about it is Alsace-Lorraine is a very important little area. It's right on the western border of Germany and France. It belongs to France now, but it's changed hands multiple times, right? But we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. I'll see y'all soon. Germany is now a country, Einigung von Deutschland. Ja, see y'all soon. Y'all have a good one.